But I was looking at myself when I was dead, and I was like, the thoughts that came were like, his mind is dead, his body is dead, his ego was dead. And I think it was very important that it presented that way to me, that I presented it that way to me, or however to articulated it. Because in that moment, I was like, well, then what am I? Like, what remains?
Yeah.
And it was soul, it was light, it was energy, it was awareness. And but I didn't remember the trauma. I didn't remember the identity stuff. I didn't remember pain. I didn't remember confusion. I didn't remember David's stuff. Like, David's stuff was gone because his mind, his body, and ego was dead. When I came back into this body, I was like, there's David's stuff, and there's what I actually am. You know, I didn't remember David's stuff when I became what I actually am. When I'm coming back into this body, I don't have to center David's stuff, you know, because David's stuff led to David's death, you know.
Hi, and welcome back to the Natalie Rustic podcast, a place to share near death and spiritually transformative experiences. Today's guest is David Williamson, who will be sharing his life transformational near death experience. But it will take you on an incredible journey, so stick around. And if you're new here, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, as this does help my videos go a long way. But without further ado, I welcome you, David.
Well, I'll start. I'm David Williamson. Had a near-death experience in 2017. It was February 7th of 2017. My heart valve ripped on February 1st of 2017 during one of those blood blue moons. And
Right.
I've tried to tell people that if you have health issues and you know the schedule of these blood blue moons, you should try to do everything that you're supposed to be doing, like all of the interventions that you're supposed to be doing. If you're slacking on them, if there's a blood blue moon coming, you need to take your medications, you need to eat properly, because those are
Right.
high energy times. And a lot of people who have heart issues, they die during those super moons. So and this is something that I've heard since I shared my experience, because I was explaining to a few people that my heart valve ripped on a super moon, and they was like, well, my father died on a super moon, my grandfather died on a super moon, my mother died on a super moon. I'm like, oh, wow. So
Wow.
if you don't pay attention to your health in these highly energetic moments, uh, if your energy is off, that increase could just take you out of here.
So how did you, sorry, I'm going to just ask you the question already. How did you find out about that with the super moon? Like, how did you piece the puzzle together?
Well, I had been following a lot of people posting on internet, on Facebook, about these super moons that are coming, and in that time, they had a few ones before that one, but that one was called a blood blue moon, or something like that. And I didn't pay attention to it. I was just sitting in the garage with my buddies, but I was aware of it. And
Mm.
and my I could feel my heart beating harder, and then all of a sudden I felt like a rip, but the rip wasn't localized to my heart. It's like, I don't know if it's because of the nerves, the way the nerves work. The pain was in the middle of my back and in my shoulder, my left
Mm.
shoulder. And so I literally was walking around for 7 days before the heart attack happened, because it was
No
7 days.
medical attention or anything.
None at all. Just holding my
Right.
shoulder. Yeah. Like, because it felt like my shoulder was falling off.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was just holding my shoulder. Then after a little bit of time, I can integrate pain. I played football and all that silliness, so I could integrate pain. And I just integrated the pain. I was like, okay, this is how my back is going to be hurting and shoulder's going to be hurting. And moving forward, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And then on that seventh day, it was just, I was leaving work, and it was a normal day, a normal leaving work, and I was speaking to people. There was a lady that had been waiting for a while for a ride. I had seen her kind of sitting in this chair, And I had gone to grab some paperwork, went back to my classroom, came back. I was teaching at a technical, vocational technical school. I was teaching computer classes. And so as I was leaving, I was speaking to people, and I said, this one man, I remember him specifically because he said, "See you tomorrow, Mr. Williamson." And my assumption was I would see him tomorrow. you know?
Yeah.
And I stepped off the curb, and then I felt this little stinging in my chest, and I couldn't breathe the same. It was immediately starting to like affect everything, and then it'll go away for a little bit, and it would come back, and so I was sitting in the car trying to decide if I was going to call 911 right then and there, or whether I was going to try to go home. And but I decided to go home, and all the way home, I'm feeling my heart is doing this crazy stuff, and I'm getting dizzy sometimes, and then I get back normal, and then I'm having to hold my eyes open, and then I get home and I'll say, "Let me eat a snack." And maybe
Oh, I
maybe
might be dying. Hold on a minute. I'm just gonna go make a snack.
that's exactly what it. And then I ate the snack, and I was like, "This is not changing at all. It's actually getting worse." And so I called Trish, my son's mother, and I said, she was upstairs. She works from home, and I said, I'm pretty sure I need to go to the emergency room now because my chest isn't getting any better. And we went like immediately. And in the car, I was actually like fading. I was trying to catch my breath. I was like, I just couldn't keep my breath because from my understanding, when the valve ripped, my blood wasn't flowing through my body. It was just I
Right.
wasn't getting oxygen. So for me, it felt like I was drowning. If I was just I couldn't breathe. I just kept trying to catch my breath and I couldn't breathe. And by the time I got to the emergency room, I was extreme. Like I was trying to explain to them what was going on. I said I told them I was pointing to my chest, telling them I had a heart attack. I'm having a heart attack, and it's really, I can't. There's no time, because the guy was trying to get me to sign paperwork, and I couldn't sign anything. I was shaking, and my body wasn't really functioning right. So I got really upset with him, and I think I cussed him out pretty good. And after the,
Yeah.
but after everything was over with, I went back to him and I apologized to him for everything because I just told him that I was afraid. I knew I was dying and I knew that I couldn't sign any papers, and I just wanted things to move forward. I didn't want to sit there having a conversation, at that moment,
Yeah.
And I said, and I'm really sorry because I know that's your job. You need to get this information. I said, but I think in certain situations, it's impossible. That you have to be a bit more, intuitive when it comes to that. Like I wouldn't have been able to fill out anything. My mind wasn't present,
Yeah.
and and he understood, and he was like, "There's no need for apology." He was really understanding, and that affected me, because I didn't want him to feel what I was doing. Like I didn't want him to feel the impact of the emotions that I was having in that moment.
And this was after the fact, right? You went back to him to
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. We'll get into
yeah.
that part a little bit later. I know why though. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think too, because okay, now after that moment, he did get me on the gurney, and it was probably seconds after I was on the gurney that I was passed out. But I remember them pushing me towards the door to where they were going to be working on me to try to resuscitate me. But I was gone before I got in there, And I always think that that's important to say because, I'm going. It is almost verbatim from previous, interviews. But it was when people speak about these, they sometimes think that it's hallucination. And but
Mm.
I was gone before I went into the emergency to room where they were working on me. I was already gone. But when I opened my eyes, I knew where everything was at because I learned about that room when I left my body and was floating above. So there was no hallucination. I literally was learning in real time in that
Yeah.
room about what was happening, And I saw the defibrillation. I saw it all. So it was like I couldn't have hallucinated that. And the
Right,
people,
right.
yeah, where everybody was standing when I came back, everybody was standing in that same place. Like I could see them, So there was learning happening. There was no hallucination happening. So that's I think a very important part. But okay, once they got me into the room, and I'm gonna go through this. Once they got me into the room where they were resuscitating me, I saw blackness. Like I was, I mean, I'd already closed my eyes. So when I was in there, I saw blackness, but where the people were standing, there was dots of light, like pixelated dots of light. Um, it's just like energy is what it seemed like. It was just dots of light, and but I knew that that's where people were. I knew that, and that was only a very brief moment where I was seeing in that way. And the way that I kind of explained that to myself was that was as I was dying, and it was almost like the computer was shutting down and it wasn't functioning properly. So I was
Yeah.
still able to see. I wasn't seeing through my eyes, but I was seeing what was there, and what was there was energy, and those people. But it was just for me without the eyes, it was just dots of light, and I think that was just the malfunctioning as my body was shutting down. And but very immediately after that moment of seeing them in that state with the blackness and the dots, I was above my body, like very quickly after that, and then I could see everybody very, pretty clearly. The voices sounded like I was underwater, though. It took a lot of focus for me to hear everything clearly and to see clearly. Like I could, if I looked hard and like if I really focused my attention on what I wanted to see, it cleared up a little more. But
Right.
but for the most part, it was like almost underwater for much of the time that I was out of my body looking at everything. But I saw everything. I felt people's emotions. I felt people's fear and anxiety. And there were two people in particular that felt the most fear and anxiety about me dying. And it felt like love. It felt like compassion. And one was the woman that I've mentioned in previous interviews that was in the back of the room, the back left of the room. And she was holding her face, like this. And I will never forget her because I wanted so badly while I was disembodied to talk to her and tell her that everything that I was experiencing was perfect. It was beautiful, and there's no reason for her to feel bad, and that death isn't what we think. And I just wanted to tell her everything that I was experiencing, and I felt bad that I couldn't. I didn't figure it out. But the interesting thing, and that even in feeling that I felt bad that I couldn't tell her that I felt like I could learn how to tell her that. Even while I was there, I felt that I could figure that out. But I
Right.
felt like if I was there long enough, that I would have been talking to this lady and telling her that everything was fine, because my attention, even though I was experiencing, even when I left, well, I'll get to that. So I'm watching her and I'm watching them resuscitate me. And it gets to a point where it's like, the wow of it kind of subsides,
Mm.
and I kind of start just looking around. And then at one moment I remember looking up and I saw the ceiling for a split second, and then I was in space. It was instantaneous. There was no tunnel or anything like that. This is very important. I'm so glad I just thought about this, because one thing that I think is important to have a conversation about is how a lot of spiritualists in the past and even contemporary spiritualists try to distill gazillions of near-death experiences down into some singular understanding of them. And I don't think that's possible. And I don't think that that's wise. I think that there are some general things that are going to be similar, but
Mm.
there are over 8 billion people on this planet. There are over 8 billion experiences on this planet. There are over 8 billion lives on this planet, and there are going to be over 8 billion deaths on this planet. And they're all going to
Right.
be related to the lives, the experiences, and the attention of the person who's having that experience. It has nothing to do with some general understanding of this. It,
Yeah.
and because of the vastness of the opportunities that exist on this planet, the vastness of the experiences that exist on this planet, the variation of life, look, how we experience, everything is so different. To assume that there's some generic distilled explanation that you can give to every single human being about near-death experiences is, to me, it's ambitious. It's really difficult to imagine that. So
Yeah.
the easiest way to talk about them in a generalized sense is to erase that stuff, is to erase all the ideology and to talk about it from what you are when you leave this body. And what you are when you leave this body is energy. You can call it soul, light, spirit, awareness. For me, attention works the best because that's what it felt like for me. Wherever my attention was where my experience seemed to happen. If I looked into the emergency room, my experience happened there. I was in there trying to figure out how to talk to the lady that was concerned about me dying. When I looked back into space, my experience happened there. And I was traveling through space and really, really enjoying it. I did not care about the light because I did see the light immediately once I went to space. But it was very far away from me. I felt like I was very far away from everything. I didn't have any experience with other angels or family or pets or anything like that. It was no other words. There were no other voices. It was just me trying to figure out what was going on around me and me being in awe of everything and really, really enjoying traveling through space and looking at star forming regions and black hole. The black hole to me is what people call the void, but I feel like it's a black hole. I mean, because everything else that I saw when I was out of my body had a tangible, and if I just kept saying that it was the void without trying to give it a word that every other thing had,
Mm.
then I would just be metaphysicalizing it, not really grounding it, you know.
You
But
just said something really important, and I just had to. I do host a podcast for people who have near death experiences, right? So I'm hearing all of these different experiences, and you've just pointed out something that I thought of is that all of these people are saying, the general NDE, you see the light, you see the void, you see this. And I'm like, no, it's not that at all. They're all so different. You can't put a
yes,
label on something that's so vast and something that
yes,
you can't put language to when you're trying to express these experiences. So I'm so thankful that you shared that today, because I just don't want to give anything labels. As the person
yeah,
listening to the experience, I want to hear it from a fresh perspective, not
yeah,
this is the void, this is the light. Like, I want to really get real deep into the
yeah.
experience. So,
The void thing it really is deep, but it does feel like to me after I got out of it, because I seemed to emerge from the void into the space that I was in. And
mm,
so if there was any tunnel, like even in the scientific sense, like a wormhole or something that I went through and came out of some kind of black hole like thing, I didn't see a tunnel. I just was immediately there. I didn't have a tunnel
yeah.
experience, and the light wasn't a prominent thing in my experience either. So like I've read from um, prominent speakers. I don't really like to put names out because then it sounds like I'm attacking somebody's ideology. And I don't, I think there are 8 billion ways to experience death. And so I
Right.
can't say that the other ways to experience it were wrong or not right or not true. I'm just saying that your attention, your life, your experience, you have a bigger impact on what you're going to experience when you leave here than some ideology or some generalized explanation. And I think
Yeah.
that when we start accepting these, it's the same thing with life. Once you start accepting all of these stories, that people present to us, then you your ability to create your own experience, and you just create a generic experience that somebody else told you to experience. And that's why I think there's a lot of similarities, is
Mm,
because there's so many people who believe the same things. So if you believe the
yeah.
same things and you think of them the same ways and you attach value to the same ideas and artifacts in this experience, then it increases the likelihood that there's going to be a lot of similarity between what you and somebody who believes the same things that you believe. And then and what's important with that to me is that there's only like 4 or 5 companies that control the media. So most of us
Right.
we are thinking a lot of the same things,
Yeah, the collective consciousness and all the
Yeah,
conditioning and the
yeah,
programming and pop culture and all of that. So we all are having the same sort of experience here on Earth, that our minds are sort of connected in
yeah,
some way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think that the more you center your own story, and your own story becomes your holy book, and your own story becomes the focus of this experience, or what you ground your experience back into is your story, like the repeated themes, the repeated trauma, the repeated things that, once you see the things that happen over and over, you got to love yourself like that. For me, after my near death experience, and these are things moving into the grounding, I guess, because after the near death experience, it was a while after, but I had another kind of out of body experience, and it was simple. Like I wanted to go back to the void, and
Yeah.
so I was sitting and I was sad. Like I wanted to be there and I wanted to feel it and I wanted to think more about that feeling. And so I really just kind of went into a meditation, just imagining that space. And I left my body, and I felt the love, but I stayed right above myself, and I was just sitting down, and I could see myself just sitting there thinking, you know, um, wishing, um, not, I was thinking and I was trying to figure stuff out. And I still, I still had, all of the stories in my mind. Like I've had everything was present, like who I thought I was, the trauma,
Yeah.
the identification, like identifying as something that's less than what we actually are. Identifying as a body, mind, ego.
Right.
Like all of that was still present, and but I was looking at David, and I was like, he's not gonna stop trying to figure this out. Like no matter how much trauma he goes through, no matter how much confusion he experiences, he's not going to stop trying to figure this all out. And it's like nothing in this life is more important than that. And it's like I felt so much compassion for myself, like looking at myself from above, that it was like for the first time, I think I loved myself the way that I felt love when I was disembodied. And that's what made me look at my own story. Like when you love yourself, you go back through your life and you try to figure yourself out differently, like what made me me. um
Right.
yeah. And I did that, and I saw trauma where I never thought trauma existed before. Stories from my childhood that I've just kind of shared, you know kind of have, like whatever. These are just things that I saw as a kid, but these are things
Mm.
that shaped the angry person that I ultimately became, the depressed person that I ultimately became, the person that was totally disinterested in this life. These experiences helped shape that, and a lot of it was racism. Because I was born in North Carolina, and I grew up in a town, really small town, a lot of just racial polarization, um, a lot of aggressive racism. You might hear anything in the right situation, but there was also good people, and I've experienced both. But I think the trauma is what makes you, um, it's what makes the biggest impression, and that's what you end up shaping your personality with. And I think, and I shared this in an interview that's forthcoming, but I remember. Um, as a child, I might have been 5 years old, six. Um, a Ku Klux Klan rally was happening in my town, and I didn't really, I didn't have any emotional attachment to men in suit and white sheets. I didn't really, I may have seen it in a movie or something. I may have heard people talk about it, but I didn't have any emotional attachment to that idea. But um, but we all were there and watching them, and they had police escorts, and people were trying to attack them, and I looked up at my aunt and my mother, and the rage that I saw in their faces. I think my aunt threw a bottle. One of my aunts threw a bottle at one of them. The anger, the rage, and then I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at these guys in the sheets. I'm looking at them, okay, and I'm like, okay, this is how I'm supposed to feel about this stuff. I'm
Mm.
learning, like it's integrating. Like I'm supposed to be enraged by this. When they make me feel less than or threatened, I'm supposed to just get it. I'm not. There's no fear. There's no. You know. I'm just supposed to be enraged. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I spent my whole life uh, buttressing that. That type of knowing that these people are evil and they're mean and they're going to do this to me. So I went and found a whole bunch of information that justified a very rigid perspective of race and of every single white person on the planet. And um and some people, there's some pushback that I get when I talk about this from some people, because it's like people act, they're what they're saying to me is that you should even forgive yourself for that, because there's evidence like to support that white people do a lot of bad things in the world. And there's like in different countries, the history it is. And I was like, yeah, but what's the percentage of the people that are actually making the decision to go do that, and the percentage of the people who are actually there out of responsibility? They're paying bills to take care of their family. It's the following orders. They have no say in what's happening,
Mm.
and there's only a small percentage of people who are making these decisions for them to actually go, put into play. So we have to, like, after the near death experience, I start seeing everything in a different way and having conversations with a white guy who had a near death experience too, named Zach. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, he and we've had extremely grounding conversations on how to take these concepts from just generic kind of understandings to more useful, practical understandings, and just how to consider other people. And some of the stuff that I get from our conversation is that, and these are things that the near-death experiences seem to kind of impart to you anyway, is that equality. Everybody's the same, you know. And for
Yeah, like
me,
I am you and you are a me,
yeah,
and we're
yeah,
connected. And so, therefore, I would treat you the way I would want to be treated,
yes, yes,
right?
yes. And not only that, is like what I saw myself as after the experience was just an orb of light that was vast and new stuff, and didn't hold on to my personal experience from Earth. It didn't have any trauma. It didn't have any
Mm,
pain. It didn't have any confusion. So my assumption was when I came back is that that's what I still am. I'm just inside of this body, and this body,
right.
yeah, yeah. And so now in continuing continuing to ground this, like it's becoming an orientation towards this life. Like, I don't believe anymore that there's spiritual reality and physical reality. There's only one reality. And whether I'm a piece of energy that's inside of a body or a piece of energy floating through space, it's the same system that I'm floating through. It's
Right.
the same matrix. Now there's different like the dimensional stuff, like the fact that the people couldn't see me in the room when I was there. I just think that that's, I mean, our sensitivity, our nervous systems, all of these things play into that. But I think that there are people who do see these orbs. They do see these lights.
Definitely.
Yeah, and they feel them and they understand. Some people even have expressed understanding them to be certain people.
Hi guys, if you're enjoying this video, please don't forget to give it a like, share, and subscribe. And also, it would be great if you could tag 3 of your closest friends who would find value out of this content. And more importantly, please comment below your thoughts and how you've gone along your journey, as I'd love to hear from you all. But guys, I won't interrupt any further. Let's jump back into the video.
Even in like Autobiography of a Yogi, is spoken about people returning in orbs of light to teach. And I don't think that that's far-fetched anymore, because I
Yeah,
felt like I, as an orb of light, was trying to communicate with that woman, that was hurting in the emergency room. I wanted to communicate to her, and I was an orb of light. So if I was an orb of light trying to communicate with her, then the stories that I've read, the fantastical stories that I've read in some of the ancient texts or the books about these ancient thinkers and scholars and spiritualists, um, they all immediately make sense to me. I just needed to figure some stuff out when I was an orb, and then I would have been able to do
yeah.
some of the same stuff. Yeah.
Did you end up being able to meet that woman later on and talk to
Mm-mm.
her?
No. When I opened my eyes, when I was resuscitated, the first words that I blurted out were, "Are you okay?" And I was looking to the left to try to find her. But I don't know if it was a combination of exhaustion and just the people being around me that I never really recall seeing her, or whether she wasn't even a real person. She could have just been an ancestor, because she kind of reminded me of my aunt, who she wasn't there during my NDE, but she was in like a hospice kind of circumstance.
Yeah.
And she may have been kind of in between worlds, and she had many heart attacks, and I loved her. So, and I know she loved me. So I know that if there was somebody that could have showed up in that way and felt those things about me leaving here, it could have been her. Um,
Oh,
so that's always been a thought that it was her, but when I was confused about the dates that she died. So when I was told that she died later, I kind of was like, it may not have been her, but then I still thought like her health would have
time is
been,
an illusion as
it's an
well, though,
illusion.
you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. That's who it felt like, is her. And because if I felt love from this person, and that's what made me that's what made me see her clearer than everybody else in the room. And that's what also made me hear like her thoughts and her pain and what she was feeling about what was happening. Like I didn't want her to feel that at all. And I think love is the medium, I think, that allows communication to
Mm,
happen between dimensions. And so if you know people who leave, you have artifacts of theirs, you have clothing articles of theirs, things that they loved, you know, communicating with them is, to me, like that's what ancestral reverence in a lot of African traditions that still are active today. These are the things they do. They create shrines and put personal belongings of their family members who died on them, and they communicate, with them
wow.
via love. It's love.
Yeah.
Love is the medium, I think, to communicate to the other realms. And if you've known this person in this life and you've touched them, you've touched that orb. If you touch their body, you've touched that orb. So just simply touching that person and them leaving here, there's a connection there. And all you have to do is think about them and the love. And I think that the connection, it becomes clearer to the person, even on the other side, because I was in space, moving through space, totally immersed in that, loving that. But still, when this woman, when I look back there, I still felt her and I still wanted to communicate with her. It's like the portal stayed open because of her, is what it felt like,
Yeah.
you know.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. I wonder if you could do like a regression and see and feel more into that and find out a little bit more about that person. And, that's definitely a possibility of something you could do if there's such a connection there that you want to know more about it. You can go through a regression to see more and to kind of relive that experience as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I'm
And
totally open to that. Yeah. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
right. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. So you said that you were that orb, you were that light, and you came back here, and regardless of whether it's a body here, you're still that orb of light. So do you feel that you have still a connection to the other side? Do you have any sort of abilities that you're now aware of as a result of being connected to the other side?
Yeah, I definitely feel connection to the other side. And I think it's simple, like the same way that I just explain kind of what I believe we are is attention, Um, I have
Yeah, like
attention.
where mind goes, energy flows. So it's all with
Yeah.
to do with mind, right? The
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah. So I have attention that's never going to leave that space ever, and it's probably a huge part of my attention because now that's the only thing I think about here, even when I'm doing other things that I think mostly about there and that feeling. And to say it is here and there, it's not really accurate to me anymore because
Mm,
I did look at it that way, but it's and I'm writing a book on this. And this is how people have been telling me to write books forever, and I'm finally clear on what I want to write. And
congratulations.
but it's really your attention, and I think we have different attentions that are based upon different parts of our anatomy. Like your body, there's a body attention. There's the thoughts that come from the body. Then there's the thoughts that come from the world that you live in, the society that you live in. And then there's the perspective that we have outside of the body that can assess all of these things and determine if they're effective and can choose differently if these other suggestions aren't working. And I think that's the attention that I have that's in other places now. It's not just here on my body and what my body is going through in this life. Is also thinking about when I leave here, what do I want to do and what's next? And it's working on creating opportunities for me there. And even like things that I imagine is like traveling and creating universes, or trying to participate in this creation of this in a different way to where I'm helping improve it, and improve how it works for everybody. Uh, this is a experience that soul goes through, and I feel like when you have these experiences and you have an awareness of soul, awareness of the aura, but attention of the thing that we are after we leave this body, then you can start imagining what's next. And I think that's because my attention is still there so much. I'm imagining what's next, but I'm not imagining it simply from this is all that I want to do. I'm imagining from how can I energetically affect this place, or how can I affect this place in a way
Mm.
that makes it easier for other souls who come through this place and experience this, that helps that. And I don't even know if that's a logical thing to think, you know what I'm saying? But uh, I do think that this universe can be conditioned differently than it is, that allow the energy and the knowing to kind of flow differently than it does now, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that some of that happens just as we move through space, as we move through the cosmos. And I think we are approaching a time, and it may be a cycle where we are returning back to a space in space that has a quality and it affects us in a certain way. And I think that we're about to see some of the changes that I would like to see in the system. I guess even
Mm.
in saying that, I think it's just a cyclical thing. Like even the things that I'm saying that I would like to see happen or be able to help change it, these are things that just happen naturally in this system as it goes through its own cycles.
It's
So
interesting that you say that because I'm feeling like something's happening. There's a shift, there's a change
yeah,
in the way we think. There's a lot of people who are turning more to spirituality. Things are changing, and I can't quite pinpoint what's going on. Did you find something on the other side? Did you come to some understandings of life? Why are we here?
yeah.
How do you find your purpose? Like, did you come across any of those knowings?
Well, for me, the knowing that encapsulates all of this to me is just it's all one. We're all one, and it's a beautifully elegant system, and it creates
Yeah.
what we want. It creates what we want. It creates what we feel. It creates what we think. And if we're at each other's throats, then the system is going to create. It's going to continue to allow us to perpetuate that experience because that's what we seem to want. But once we stop identifying with these nationalities, religions, and in such rigid, harsh, dividing ways, and we just start sharing that stuff. If I'm different than you, then I should just feel compelled to share it, not use that as a barrier to keep me from you understanding me and me understanding you. And I think that that's my orientation now, is that if we could look at our differences as just variation, as just ingredients in a gumbo, you know. You take all of one thing out, then you ain't got the same food anymore. It ain't as good as it was, you know. And I
Yeah.
think if we looked at that as a synergistic kind of thing, it's like there are different people. They might think different. They might look at life differently, but look at what they offer the planet, you know. And I could go around every country and speak about the beauty that each country offers this planet, you know. And and it makes the wars senseless to me. It makes the looking at the difference in a
Yeah.
negative way crazy to me, you know. But I spent 38 years of my life thinking that way, thinking that this race stuff matters, you know, because it had mattered so much in my life. It, at least in my mind, I blamed racism for everything, even in situations where it was me that created the
Mm.
outcome, you know. And learning that too, like learning how gaining um energetic accountability, like accountability for my thoughts. If you want an outcome and you're thinking in a way that's counter to that outcome that you want, and then you don't get the outcome that you want, and then you choose to blame somebody else that's at the table
Mm.
with you, then that's not in alignment with what actually happened. I would come into situations literally hating the person that's across the table, but wanting them to open a door for me, you know. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, even if their mind isn't aware that I hate them, the
Mm.
awareness that's in them is, and it's not going to suggest to them to open any doors for a person that hates them. It's not even going to feel connection and a connection enough with what's in front of them to have to create that, to pursue a connection, to pursue a relationship, because you've presented to them something that's potentially dangerous. Your thoughts, your energy could potentially hurt them. You know what I'm saying? If you carry hate for them, their nervous system, their spirit, everything in them is saying that you might need to get away from this person. You might not need to let them in the door with you, you know. And when you leave that situation, especially me, when in those moments, I was saying, oh, a racist person decided not to let me in the door because I'm black. But what it really was that a sensitive person felt my rage and my anger and my resentment and hate for them, and they didn't get any suggestions from their awareness to say yes. Because
Mm.
who would get suggestions from there? The most intelligent part of us is not going to tell you to put yourself in danger. It's
Right.
just not. And if there's a person in front of you hating you, that's potential danger for you, at least energetically. You know, even if
Yeah.
I've never fought people based upon my depression and misery. I never just walked around fighting white people. I never did that. I never was a violent person that way. But the thoughts were violent, like in terms of just hating. Those thoughts are violent.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
same as punching somebody in the face. And that's how when you have accountability for your thoughts and your energy, you can't I ain't if I'm thinking that and I'm feeling that, I'm doing that. And
Yeah.
I need to check myself and I need to behave better, even if my actual behavior didn't even happen. The thoughts and the energy was there. So it happened, you know, and I'm checking that. I'm checking those thoughts now. Whereas before I never really understood the need to. But how does physical reality come into existence? It's through our thoughts and our energy. So
Yeah.
if I'm already in thinking and my energy is in that space, then I'm probably going to help perpetuate a reality that reflects that same hate and energy. And that's, you know, and when you get those outcomes, you can't blame anybody but yourself, you know, because you perpetuated that, you know.
Let
So,
me ask you this question. So, the person that you were before your NDE, just give us a quick recap on the type of person you were before your NDE, like your mindset, your attitudes, your
yeah.
lifestyle. Like, what were you like pre-NDE and then afterwards?
Okay. Um, I would say from childhood all the way up, was deeply interested in spirituality. I didn't even know
Yeah.
what I wanted to be when I grew up. Um, I only wanted to understand God and heaven and what was next. And then when I finally did, start going to school and experiencing society, the race stuff became so immediately heavy, you know, that
Mm,
it's almost like as soon as I got integrated into society, I got integrated into a hate game, you know. And so I spent the bulk of my life navigating, feeling like a deeply spiritual person and not really ever wanting to hurt anybody, but experiencing a lot of hate from people who didn't look like me. And it buttressed a philosophy, an ideology, an attachment to identity that didn't have to occur had I not integrated those experiences the way that I did. But
mm,
um, but I forgive myself for integrating the experiences the way that I did now because that was my experience. Like there was nothing around me that was as loud as the hate. And so the hate
yeah.
became what I responded to, you know, and what I tried to adjust to. And all of the adjusting that I did to experiencing hate is what messed me up. It's what made me rigid and angry, depressed. I felt outside of American culture. I didn't feel like I would ever be allowed to participate fully in it, you know.
Mm,
And so I stopped trying, but the feelings of resentment never went away. They got stronger because as I got older, I saw my other friends, like how are they able to thrive in this society? And I not only am I not able to, I don't even want to. Like I don't even want to participate in this. Like I hate this. I hate the and by extension, I hated life. You know, I didn't I hated this society. I hated life. I didn't know how to participate in a way that felt good to me, you know. And the near death experience, um, once I was looking at myself when I was dead. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I mentioned it previously in previous interviews. But I was looking at myself when I was dead, and I was like, the thoughts that came were like, his mind is dead, his body is dead, his ego was dead. And I think it was very important that it presented that way to me. You know, that I presented it that way to me, or however to articulated it, because in that moment I was like, well, then what am I? Like, what remains? You know,
yeah.
and and it was soul, it was light, it was energy, it was awareness, and but I didn't remember the trauma. I didn't remember the identity stuff. I didn't remember pain. I didn't remember confusion. I didn't remember David's stuff. Like David's stuff was gone because his mind, his body, and ego was dead. So when I came back into this body, I was like, there's David's stuff, and that's what I actually am. You know, I didn't remember David's stuff when I became what I actually am when I left this body.
Yeah.
So coming back into this body, I don't have to center David's stuff, you know, because David's stuff led to David's death. You know, his trauma, his confusion, his anger, all of that led to his death. So I'm not centering that and letting that be what guides me in this life anymore. It's that fourth attention that guides me now. And that's the perspective that you gain when you are not a mind, a body, or an ego, as when you experience this place and its rawness and its beauty and it's just energy and it's what I felt was mostly love. And I saw blackness. I was immersed in blackness for a huge portion for not a huge portion, but for a portion of my experience, completely immersed in blackness. That's what I felt when I was going through the black hole. But then I saw light, the light, the stars, all of that. So and in this life, I didn't have any rigid ideological attachment to darkness or light. I think my racial experience made me more have an affinity for blackness. So even being in the black hole, there was no fear. There was like, it was a reset. The black hole was a reset. It seemed like it just took everything away, the trauma, the confusion. And then when I was looking down at the black hole, it felt like love. It felt like the same way that people describe the light. The black hole felt the same, but also another quality of the black hole is that if I looked into it, it cleared up confusion. It cleared up ideas. It cleared up everything instantaneously. And it's hard to explain how it did it, but I do remember movement in the void when I looked at it and interacted with it. And it would be like sometimes swirls. Sometimes the blackness would have a little bit of light and color and it'd be swirling. And there was no really clear pictures in the swirling, but the picture became clear. And that's difficult to articulate. But the void, if you look in the void, you got everything is there. There's all clarity is there. All answers are there. All possibilities are there. And whatever you are thinking, if there's any kind of tension between you and the reality that you're in, just the void, it clears it up. There is no question that isn't answerable there. There's no feeling that isn't satisfiable there. And it's instantaneous. So when people speak about missing loved ones, you're one with the entire system.
Yeah.
There is no missing. There is no missing anything. There is no missing. There is no concept of missing. As I was moving through space, I felt like I was expanding and becoming space. Everything that I passed, I knew, and it was like I was one with it. And one beautiful way that happened is that I was staring at a big red rock floating through space, and I simply was like a child. I just wanted to know what it was, and the distance between me and that red rock like telescopically disappeared, like it does in what's the movie, The Grudge, I think, and they use this camera where when she came out of the well and then she comes towards the screen, it just jerks, telescopically jerks. That's the way the distance between me and that asteroid and some other things too that I was staring at disappeared when I wanted to know what it was. The distance disappeared and I was there, and not only there, but kind of past it to where I had to turn my attention back around to see it. And then not only did I see it and understand what it was, but everything that was behind me, I understood what it was once I moved through that space, and giving words to it isn't easy, but there's just a knowing, it's just, I knew what everything that I encountered was after I had an initial, what is that? Then it's instant. I know what it is. Oh, what is that? It was truly like being a child because I didn't have a memory to refer to. So everything
Yeah.
was like, wow, wow, wow. And then it was immediately integrated. Like I knew it, you know, and it was beautiful. Like that was for me and the way that I want to know everything in this life, having that ability and moving through space that way was like, wow, I know I can know everything. I can travel through this whole universe and I can know everything. Like that's what the possibility felt like that I was able to I could travel through the entire cosmos and learn everything, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask, like, what's something that you would tell someone who was in your shoes before you had your near-death experience, the person that you were before? What's some
Yeah.
advice you would give to someone who may be watching this who wants answers?
Yeah. Um all of the conclusions that you make in this life, you just revisit them and revisit them and think about where you were and what happened when you made those conclusions, you know. And I can guarantee you that you won't make you'll drop to conclusions. There are no conclusions. Everything in this realm is possible. So when you make conclusions, you eliminate the possibility of everything else, you know. So for me, it's like I was so solid in what I thought I knew that it was impossible for me to learn anything else, you know? So you're really blind. You really are blind. I was really blind. Like I wasn't going to be able to understand this stuff. Like, I mean, I can even tell you, for example, like I had spiritual texts prior to my near-death experience since I was a teenager that meant nothing to me other than I knew that they had value. You know what I'm saying? I knew that they had value. But when I read it, it was like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. But now when I read them, it's like, wow, this knowledge has been passed down to us from times immemorial, and we're just not paying attention to it. We're not paying
Mm,
attention to it. And identity, ideology, is just not. I don't have any attachment to it anymore. I don't because that's what leads to trauma. When you have a target, then you can get hit, you know.
mm,
And we make ourselves the biggest targets by wrapping ourselves in all these ideas and ideology and identity, and you just basically have made yourself a huge target by putting so many words on what you think you are. But when you erase all of that, you just flow through this experience without trauma, without attachment to these words and ideologies, without taking sides, because taking
yeah.
sides and cheerleading is where the confusion and the violence come in. If you take sides and you cheerlead for one piece of creation, then you're going to end up feeling the need to defend that one piece of creation uniquely over everything else, you know. And it's all zeros and ones. Everything here is zeros and ones. It's all information, and it's all for us to use in ways that create harmony, not to fight, not to cheerlead for one thing and then discard another thing. We are supposed to integrate the information that we have at our disposal and create a beautiful experience for all of us here. And once we start cheerleading for one particular body of knowledge or one particular skin color or ideology or identity, violence begins. You know.
Incredible. I see a future for you, a really bright future. What are your plans for your new life, your newfound life? What do you plan to do to share your knowledge to the people? I mean, you've got your book, um,
Yeah.
but there's so much more going on there.
I mean, on Clubhouse the other day, and I hope the guy actually sees this interview. Yeah, yeah. But a guy told me I was long-winded, you know, and I think he thought I was mad by it, but I really laughed, you know, because I never talked before. I never even wanted to talk to people before. I never liked people before. I ain't like anybody. I hated everybody, you know. And so for somebody to say that I'm long-winded means that I feel value in talking to people enough to where it's totally it's not what I used to do, you know, not strangers. I didn't sit and have deep, long conversations with strangers before I had a near-death experience. But now when I feel when there's a spiritual conversation happening and people have confusion about certain things or have rigid, you know, perceptions of certain things, I feel like there's an opportunity to at least share the experience and let them know how I was able to see how my ideology and my rigidity and my identity and all that stuff literally killed me. It literally killed me.
Mm,
It,
yeah.
and And it gives them a story as to how being rigid that way can kill you. It really hurts you. It really, really hurts you. There is no beauty in only seeing your own beauty, you know,
Yeah.
because you exist in a beautiful realm that you come from, you know. And so that realm is as beautiful as you. So when you say I'm beautiful and nothing else here is beautiful, then you've totally isolated yourself in the context of a realm that is full of beauty and possibility and amazing other awarenesses here that are going through the same process, you know. And it's like now when I see people who have the kind of anger that I had, it's like I sometimes smile and I'm like, you know, hopefully it pushes you in the way that it pushed me to a really catastrophic, foolish end. You know, whether it's death or not, I don't want anybody to experience what I experienced. I had to get my chest cracked and a valve replaced in my heart, and that kind of pain I wouldn't wish on anybody. But I hope that people's stories all lead them back to them, and it doesn't have to be a traumatic, you know, experience that leads them back to them, but your story should lead you back to you. And when you and when it does, like you because you're seeking God, most people are seeking God, but when your story leads you back to you, you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to see that that's what I was actually seeking the whole time, and that very well may be God.